So I'm gonna put this die on here and run threads all the way to the base of this stud that I broke off. Just cleaning all these metal shavings out of here with my magnet from running those new threads on. I couldn't find a grade 8 nut, so I just ground the lock part off the top of this nut here. Try to get this thing heated up enough before I start stacking these washers on here and tightening the nut down. I just keep taking this off and stacking more washers on, running my nut back down on there. That keeps working that broken bolt up out of there. Finally got it. There it is. Now that I've got that broken stud pulled out of here, we've got to get new threads, or we got to get threads put into this journal or boss, whatever you want to call it, that the new stud's going to go in. The new stud's a 7/16 14 thread, and it'll get threaded down in there. You just got to line this tap up and make sure you're running it straight down there as you possibly can, and then keep working it back and forth and cutting new threads into that journal. I ran this tap down in there. I got this thing stuck in here all the way to the bottom where I needed it to be threaded to, and now it's stuck. Just start heating this up now and try to get this tap out of here without breaking it off. Man, this thing's stuck tight. Finally got a little bit of movement out of it. Oh man, that was lucky. Get it back out of here. Clean all this stuff up. See if I can get this new bolt started in. Alright, I got it all cleaned out. Put thread locker on the new stud. Double nutted this. Run it all down tight. So finally we're ready to go back to putting our push rods and rocker arms back on this thing. Feel like I'm back to where I was the other day with this. So we're going to take the lash out of these push rods, and we're going to set them, get everything set like it's supposed to be. I've already done this one here. Now, from everything that I'm watching and reading and all that stuff, you want to set these when your intake is completely closed. And why that is when your cylinder or your piston's up at the top and it fires on that, your intake valve is going to be closed, and when that fires, that'll let the compression go out the exhaust. So that's why you want this intake closed. And I'm sitting here with this one, but this is the intake on this cylinder. And you can look on the side of your block. I'll show you here. Some of this stuff's simple to everybody, but maybe not to me so much. But I look at this one, and this is the exhaust right here. See, it lines up with this one, so that would tell me this would be exhaust. So if this one's exhaust, then this one's intake. So you're gonna want to adjust it when this intake's closed and you're at top dead center. That will allow the fire to go out the exhaust instead of popping back through your intake. So that's kind of the explanation on that. And I'll show you one other cool little thing I figured out by playing with this here in just a second. All right, now that I've gave that little rambling explanation of how I believe everything works here, is now I've showed you through the side that this is the exhaust and this is the intake. So we're gonna run this down. You can see this intake, it's going down. Okay, so it's down on the bottom now. Now this should, if I turn it, blow compression out there. You can hear that. All right, so that's compressed, letting the air out. All right, now I want to show you something to make sure we're at top. You look inside that spark plug hole right there. Boom, you see the top of that piston? Right there, you can see the top of the piston. Now, I'm gonna figure out a way to get this light on it and turn it at the same time, because if you can watch that with a flashlight, so you know you're on the upstroke that's gonna fire, and you want that at the top. We'll see if I can find a light on this. All right. See the top of the piston, and we know we're on the right upstroke. So when we turn that, okay, now it's starting back down again. We don't want that. We want it right on the top. So bump it back the other way. Now I'm just loosening my bolt. Let's go all the way around again. Alright, intake's coming up. Now it's closed. Alright, so we should be seeing the top of that piston any minute. There's the top of the piston. Intake valve's closed. And there's the top of it. Just start to go back down. So right there, it's at top dead center. Now that I've got that intake valve closed, I'm gonna start taking the lash out of this, all this up and down play. I just wanna work this slowly until all the up and down play is gone. Once all this up and down play is gone, and I can just spin this push rod a little bit, then I'll go a 3/4 turn. And what that'll do is that'll push that push rod into the top of that lifter, and then your preload's set. And then we'll move to the next one right here, and I'll pull the valve lash out of that too. Just keep slowly turning that rocker down until I get all the lash or the play out of that. Once I get all the lash and play out of it, And I can still spin the push rod just a little bit. Got a little bit more there. All right, the lash is about gone. Then I'll do my 3/4 turn, and that'll set the preload on this lifter. And then we'll just work all the way around the engine. We'll set each piston up the top dead center on its firing stroke with the intake valve closed, and then we'll just continue on around, taking out the lash and setting the preload in each lifter. Got all these things preloaded. Flip this thing over and start getting this rear main seal. Got to get this rear main cap taken off of here. Alright, this is this half, the rear main seal. And that rear cap, there's the half the seal there. And then the other half's down in here. I'll bring the camera around so you can see that here in a second. This is a good time to inspect your rear or your bearing here. See if there's any scoring on it or anything. They say when they're wore real bad, they'll have a brass color showing on them. This one looks pretty good, so we'll get this seal changed and put a little bit of oil on this, and we can put it back together once the new seal's in. Alright, here's the other half the seal that runs down underneath the crank. We just got to get a screwdriver or a punch and start tapping on that and push it up around the crank and bring it out the top side. Something like this right here. We'll just start tapping on it right here. As soon as I get on it there. Hopefully this thing ain't stuck too bad. Alright, it's starting to come up out of there now. Just had to get on it square. Find another tool here, help me get down in there a little better. Just get it pushed up through this side good enough that I can get a hold of it with a pair of pliers or something. Then I can pull it on out of there. Alright, I got the old one out. We'll get the back of this crank cleaned up a little bit with some brake clean, wipe it down with a rag, and oil up the new one and get it ready to put back in. Alright, I got it all cleaned up and oiled these new seals down. This one just slides right on around down underneath the crank. And this lip right here, you want to make sure that's facing the right direction. That goes in toward the motor. It acts as an oil dam. We'll get all this cleaned up, and I'll put the other half in the rod cap. And then I'm going to put a little bit of silicone right there on these edges where these two meet. That way they're sealed together good once I put that rod cap back on there. Alright, I got a little dab of silicone on each one of those seals. And I'll oil up these bearings now. Put this rear main cap back on. And then get these bolts all cleaned up, put down in there. And then we'll do a 3-step torque on this. Alright, I'm going to put a new timing chain and gear set on this engine, because a lot of you guys in the first video noticed how sloppy loose this thing was. It's kind of stretched out. So I finally got to the point where I can replace that. New gear set and chain has dots on the gears just like what's on these. And what I've done is I've rolled this engine around until number 1 is on top dead center, and these 2 dots are facing each other directly like this. Earlier I had this number 1, the piston up top, and this gear's dot was up here, and this gear's was here. That's 180 degrees out. So I rotated the motor all the way around again, and that brought them to here, and looked through the spark plug hole, and that piston's right on top. So this is how this is supposed to be set. So I'm just going to remove these 2 gears and chain, and I'm going to slide the other ones back on in place with the 2 dots still facing each other. This piston up top still, and then that ought to be set. First thing I want to do is take this out without rotating anything. Let's see if we can get that done. Alright, so we got that out of the way. Now, take this out of there. Alright, got those out. Now we'll pull this gear here. So we look back. There's the old gear. Set those to the side. Now I got to get this gear off. So I think this one's for the harmonic balancer. I'll pop that out of there. It'll be fine. Doesn't look like it. Just run it down with the impact here. There we go. Pop that gear off there, no problem. Set that aside. Put a little bit of my stuff on there. And that right back in. That. I still got my dot facing up. That only goes on one way, so as far as if you keep that dot to the outside where you can see it. Right, I got this great big socket here. I can put it over top of that. And that gives me something to tap on where I can keep it going on straight. Flashlight. Sure I got it tied up against there like the other one was. Oh, it's tight all the way against that. And let's see the dots right here. We want it to face that dot. So I'll hang this chain on here like this. Let's see. This pin is going to go in that hole, so we're going to want to rotate it around like so. Bring that up and see if we're where we need to be or not. It's really close. Okay, there it is. I don't want to force anything. I'm gonna wipe these bolts down, put a little bit of Loctite on the bolts. That dot and that dot are lined up. That's on number one, or number one's up top. It's on the right stroke. Put a little thread locker on them. Nothing serious, just a medium blue thread locker. I mean, I took them out, it didn't have anything on it at all. I'll run these down. I believe the torque spec's 20 pounds. I'm not 100% sure, so I'll double check that. And then we'll set the torque gun up and get this torqued. Alrighty, torque's on this is 20 pounds. Alright, that's 20. So you can run 18 to 23, so I'll say we're good on that. I'm standing here looking at this, and if you can see inside of this hole right here, see right here where my finger's coming up through that hole, you can see that push rod right there. So there are a couple of those holes, that one's not so bad, that if you put too long of a bolt in, you could potentially run that into a push rod. So I think definitely on the four corners you can use the longer bolts. And there's a couple of those holes I really don't know that it would ever hit the push rod. But I'm gonna stop just for a minute and clean up a couple of my shorter bolts and do some double checking on the lengths on these things, because I don't want to run a bolt in and have it hit the push rod. Now on these gaskets here in the corners, I'll lift that up and put a little bit of RTV here on the underneath side and some on the top on all four corners of this, and that'll help seal that up a lot better. And these little holes that these rubber gaskets go in, these holes here, make sure you take something and get down in there and get all the grease and dirt out of those holes, so these little rubber gaskets will go down in there good. So here's the only two bolts that line up directly with the push rod, so I definitely want to make sure I put the shorter bolts in these two holes here. And the other ones that are close, they kind of run along beside it, and I put some washers together to represent the thickness of the intake and all that, and checked all my bolts to make sure there wouldn't be any problems with those, and everything checks out to be good there. Like I said, these are the only two here that you're gonna want to make good and sure you got the proper length of bolt in, or you could run it right into your push rod. I got that Eldebrock intake off that 305. I got it cleaned up a little bit, and all the mating surfaces ready for that. So that's the intake we're going to be using, and I'm going to go ahead and daub a little bit of my RTV in these four corners, put on my other gaskets, and I've got all the other bolts, got the threads coated with thread sealer, and then I'll coat these two here and get those put in, and we'll get it torqued down. Printed off a cheat sheet just like last time. This is the front. So here, I'll torque them 3 stages here. I don't even know on my thing whether you can hear it on the first stage or not. It's very hard to get at. I don't even know how I can get in there on these. Need a wrench. There we go, intake's on it. It's all torqued down. These center bolts right in here. On this particular intake, it's a Performer Eldebrock 2101. I would definitely recommend these 4 bolts right here. Mainly this one and this one that line up with the push rods that I was telling you about earlier. Mainly those 2. I would get those with a smaller head on them next time if I had to do that over, because I struggled with my torque wrench to get them. I used a 12 point, I used a 6 point. I went at every different angle to try to get those 2 torqued. I finally did get them, but it was miserable. And if they ever come out, a guy's gonna have to get a real thin wall, quarter drive or something, just to be able to get those broke loose, I think. But hopefully it doesn't leak. And don't know that I'll get any further on it this session, but we got a lot done today. Hopefully everything we done will work out. It looks like my corners here, it looks like they probably sealed up good, I would say. And it doesn't look like my rubber seal is pushed out on the front. That's what a lot of guys on these, I think they squirt out when they do this. That's why they just throw them away and use RTV silicone on them. And the back one also looks good. So, guess what we got left here is timing chain cover, oil pump, oil pan, water pump, those valve covers back on, throw a little paint on the block and the heads, because I already got some paint on some of these other parts. I didn't do a real great job of it. I just kind of cleaned them up and dusted some color on them just to make it look a little better. Not too much. We'll be able to set it in there